Hello there, and welcome to Ren and Simpy. Today, yeah, that was John's idea for that title. Did yeah, Ren and Snippy. I didn't mean to say Simpy. That's a whole other.
That's a whole other. Yes.
Yeah,
You might have something there as well, but anyway.
yeah, a lot of Star Wars fans would probably, but that's a whole other can of worms. But with me today from Special Mark Productions is Mark Crosscheck. From the establishingshot.org is Jeff York. From Cinema Obscura is John Davies. And from Movies with Tarek is Tarek Fayumi. Guys, I've been waiting with bated breath to talk about this episode of Ahsoka because I remember my sentiment before the episode was about to start was they better have Thrawn. If they don't have Thrawn, I'm going to be upset because I'm worried I'm going to have to wait until episode 5 for that to come in. But luckily, we did end up, we didn't get Thrawn, but we got something very different. And I mean, I don't know if we can even get into the episode without spoiling it yet, but we can hold off on them. Until then, would anyone like to give it a sort of quick breakdown of what the episode was?
Rebels season 5. Seriously, this is the most cartoony of all the episodes of all the Ahsoka episodes of all the live action Star Wars. It's just, I don't know. This is Rebels. This is the last season of the Clone Wars. This is some fantastic Star Wars. I'm really happy.
Yeah.
I will say that from watching this episode, like even in the beginning, I loved how like the scenery. It seemed like a bunch of like fluorescent lights. It's like they're heightening the galaxy even more technologically. So that means it's like the darker paths that they go to kind of thing. It means that the more dark alleys are coming their way, especially in the forest and whatnot. Like anything that comes out of the forest after the crash landing to me was like a revelation. I'm like, yes, this is the stuff I love about Star Wars. A time when one proves themselves via the power of a lightsaber, and if they truly have it in them to use the Force.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, I do like the fact that this episode does get into it, kind of takes chances and it gets more into the elements that the cartoons have, where you're getting into witchcraft, you're getting into, and here I'm just gonna say it right now, spoilers, you've been warned.
Yep, you've been warned.
It gets into the world between worlds, and if people don't know what that stuff is, I feel a little bit like that meme of Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where you have the regular fans who've seen, like the Star Wars movies, and then you get the fans who've read the books and also have seen all the cartoon shows. And we're like Charlie pointing at the board with all the things crossing in between each other, saying, "You don't understand. This is going to have that." It's about to get nuts. They're doing something with Star Wars that's unpredictable, and that's what's really got me excited about it.
They're trying not to be. I like how they're trying to not be predictable. They're trying to give us what we expect in a very unpredictable way, and that's where even it gets more invigorating for its fans in each episode.
Right. Great. So, Jeff, what was your thoughts on the episode?
Well, I am a little bit caught in between some of you guys in the sense that I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm an old school Star Wars fan because I was a kid when that came out. The first stuff, boy, can you imagine? I know I've got the age on you guys a little bit on that, but I'm not quite the aficionado that it sounds like John and some of you guys maybe. But I have to tell you, I find that these series, and sometimes people criticize them for it, but I find these series work very well for experts like you who can say, well, this is sort of a reference to that, or this was from this book or this episode of one of the animated series. But for me, not really being chapter and verse on all that, I find this very easy to follow. I know who the characters are. I get the dynamics that they're setting up, and I appreciate that. I don't feel like I'm being spoon-fed it. Occasionally on some of the dialogue, like, Sabine, can I count on you? You can. Is that for the sixth grader out there who's like, she can count on him? She just told him. But I feel that it's fairly easy to track, even if you were a novice just coming into it. What I really like about this, and I've kind of noticed that a little bit The Mandalorian. You guys can tell me if you think I'm off on this, but I've always thought of Star Wars as a little bit of a Western anyway. It's kind of got these Western tropes and, the big bad guy and, the kind of Gary Cooper or, whomever trying to get people to band with them when it's high noon against the evil forces in town and such. And the more I watch The Mandalorian, maybe not as much this season with, I think, The Mandalorian becoming more of a parent, but with starting with this show, it seems like it's a Western. Ahsoka to me reminds me of the Man with No Name or Shane, sort of this sort of quiet, sort of stoic person who walks into town. And one of the things I said in the first 2 episodes that I reviewed is it's interesting, as good as she is fighting, I think she's more interesting when she's not doing all this, when she's just kind of sitting there waiting. And the battle scene that they had her this time with her sort of stopping and starting, there were these great quiet moments in there that not only remind me of sort of those Westerns when you're waiting, you're waiting for them to draw, and it's all the kind of, staring at each other stuff that Sergio Leone did so well. But it also took me back to the Darth and Obi-Wan stuff from the very first movie, where there's just this kind of waiting, like they're kind of circling around each other. They know they're both good, and it's not going to do a lot of great, for either of them to just flail at each other. It takes on almost a kabuki kind of Kurosawa quality to it that I think is quite lovely. And he kind of made Japanese Westerns all of his career. So I found it very riveting. A little bit of it seems a little silly, like the Rock'em Sock'em Robots fight kind of in there was a little bit, I think that's for comic relief, of course. And I still can't believe it. The only people who can do the British, the robot voices seem to be British, whether it's David Tennant, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, or the original Anthony Daniels. Some comment on the cast system, like, it'd be funny if we get all the posh Brits to sound like they're the basic servants. But I really liked it. I think it's interesting, and I love the fact that it's all the more interesting when it slows down and sort of just has them watching each other, and sort of seeing where this is going to go. And, the characters, I think, are very interesting when they're just sort of studying each other and you're not quite sure what's going to happen with them.
Well, with the droids being British, let's not forget all the Imperials were British as well.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So
it's all about colonialism.
that's where the voices come from. The Brits, the Imperials built the voice boxes so they sound British as well.
Revenge of America and Gandhi. I'm telling you.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is like this one kind of, you can follow it easily, but you don't need to know everything. And yeah, it's this very much is like a Western, and it's a lot like a Kurosawa film. You have everyone walking out in this large forest, and they're waiting, before they're gonna do their next attack. And this is sort of like the next best thing to sort of paying homage to that, but also being its own thing, because this is Star Wars that is very akin to the cartoon shows. And with the cartoon shows had like all these crazy things like witchcraft and time travel and these sort of things. And is that going to work for the overall show? I think so, because it's taking chances that it hasn't before. It hasn't, gone and decided to, it usually has played everything pretty safe. Star Wars has cinematically, you could say the time it didn't play safe was The Last Jedi. And I have my issues with that film, but we won't get into that. But, this is nice to see Dave Filoni, who's been the guy in charge of the cartoon shows for so long, get taken, put centerfold into the creator position, where now he's directing an episode, not directing an episode. He did direct the first 2 episodes, I believe, of Ahsoka, but he's spearheading the writing in it. And they're allowing all their faith in him, and he's a guy who really knows the Star Wars, like even more so than I'd say like Jon Favreau, where he knows the Star Wars well. But as you saw after The Mandalorian season 2 with The Mandalorian season 3, once you kind of get over the fact that they have this adorable little child that someone has to take care of, there's not much lasting appeal to the material. And here's someone who's really diving deep into the material and digging that stuff up, where you're going to get something really exciting.
Well, I binged Rebels before watching the first Ahsoka, because I I watched all the Clone Wars, and I liked the last 2 seasons of Clone Wars when first Netflix had it, and then the final season of Clone Wars I thought was some of the best Clone Wars in the story in general. You know, you had Ahsoka in there as well, and it was Ahsoka, and they built up a lot of interesting things in those last 2 seasons. So everybody was saying, well, Rebels, you got to watch Rebels. And so I watched Rebels, and it blew me away how consistent over 4 seasons that cartoon stayed. Reminded me of the Star Wars version of Batman the Animated Series, to where even a weaker episode was still good, and it moved the main plot along. And this episode was probably the most Rebels of the episodes we've had so far, not just because it includes the in between worlds, but just in general, the way the characters were, the way it was directed, the way the story played out. You've got your samurai angle. I loved, Ahsoka, and we won't dig into what were the Inquisitors doing during the actual war. Who knows what they were doing? This guy's still left over. We don't ask that too much. But her battle was more like samurais from like from the Seven Samurai, where she they did the poses rather than actual a flurry. And also the way it was directed was more like the original trilogy. I'm with Jeff York. The fights, even between Ahsoka and Baylan, were a bit more old school fight than your very lavish Revenge of the Sith fight that you had between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
I agree with you on that, and I find even like the shorter of like those duels kind of is building a better sense of understanding to an extent of like the good and the bad, figuring out where they stand. And also the one quote that kind of comes to my mind so much from this episode is, once a rebel, always a rebel. So now I'm just wondering who's going to change sides, who's going to be a traitor. There's always, honestly, as I said before in a previous episode, it keeps going to the round where it's like, can everyone truly be trusted, is what you ask yourself, or are we going to get blindsided somehow with some kind of new adventure?
I don't know if I don't know if anyone's going to betray anyone, if that's where it's going. I think, Harrison Dula has been around since all the Rebels and has always been someone who's good. There was one theory, I will say, that turned out to be totally wrong from all the fans. And everyone thought that guy who was in the main Inquisitor mask, who didn't say anything, was actually Ezra Bridger. That quickly got shot down. And it turns out he wasn't even that. He was just, I think, like some sort of creation of the Night Sisters, where like a
made of magic or something. That was weird when he died.
Yeah, like he died with a fart cloud coming out of
it. But yeah, Jeff, I'm really glad that you mentioned the not having watched Rebels, not having been as deep into Star Wars, and you're still able to follow the story. That's awesome. Like, seriously, that's what we hoped for going into this series, because Rebels season 5 can lose people. You don't know what's going on. If you're expecting Rebels season 5, from the hype that everybody had going into this series, Ahsoka coming forward, bringing the cartoon to life, literally, with Hera and Chopper and all this, somebody not knowing what that is, still being able to enjoy this series, that tells me that this might be some of the best Star Wars that we've ever had.
That's great.
Hardcore nerd fans and people like you that like the series but aren't so insane about it like we are.
But I love that it appeals to both, because I think they do some of the very basics of hitting and tackling, like explaining who Baylan is. And in the very first episode, they did a couple of short episodes of short lines and short sort of introductory points with him that I liked. And I even think he's interesting in the way he's sort of dealing with his, if you will, apprentice. The way that she is kind of, is it Ivana? Is that her name? Who's kind of his young charge?
Sarah Hottie or something like that.
Yeah, right. But I mean, is the actress named? I think it's
Ivanka
No,
Sanko, and
there you go,
Yeah.
Ivanka Sanko. Yeah,
Batgirl from Batgirl played
yeah,
Alice.
she's very good in this, and I think I love the parallels kind of between, what she's got going on, and then what Ahsoka's got going on, sort of with her charge, and the fact that then Ahsoka was also once in that position, but now she's probably whatever Rosario Dawson's 40s is. I think those parallels become very interesting too, as clear sort of story themes or lines of thought in the storytelling that you can pick up on even just from watching it, even if you've never seen a Star Wars movie. Like, oh, I get it, there's a little parallel here. This person was sort of on the inside and now he's bad. This person was on the inside, she kind of left. They both have these young charges. They're both trying to sort of figure out how to manage this map and manage whatever bad things could be coming down the pike, maybe one good for one awful. But that's very clear, I think, too, even to the utter novice.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Balin. It is unfortunate that we had the passing of the actor, because Balin is, I think, one of the first characters we actually have gotten who's not actually Sith. He's Dark Jedi. He's not a Sith, and they have actually established that pretty well in here. His apprentice is leaning more towards Sith, but Balin here reminds me a bit more of like not redeemed, but eyes awake, so to speak, of Darth Maul from Rebels of sorts.
Interesting.
Where after he got disillusioned finally with the Force, and like the Sith, that's a bunch of BS. They abandoned me, So he was kind of this area where he wasn't really Sith, but he was out for himself. And Balin reminds me
of Qui-Gon.
Very similar.
Qui-Gon would have, evolved into had he not been
right. You're right. Balin is probably what Qui-Gon would have became, because he too saw the flaws in the Force with the Jedi Council and that, and how they went about things, and that's what I like is the Rebels, and especially Ahsoka, is what I was hoping they would finally do once Disney got Star Wars. Was that okay? Let's break away from the Skywalker saga. But what do? They do Rogue One. And what does Rogue One end up being? It's almost like an appendix to the original trilogy, to which, hey, look, here's original trilogy references. Here's some more original. Here, we're back.
Yeah.
Whereas Rebels, you have the connection with Ahsoka and Anakin, but the stories and everything is exploring a facet of Star Wars that I always wanted to see when they were going to talk about a Star Wars story movie series before they canceled that idea. Break away from the Skywalker saga. There's this huge galaxy.
And
the
Mark,
that is a sliver of the universe within.
And you're reminding me now, Mark, kind of thing like about like even how there was films like like Solo, a Star Wars story. Like I even remember working that when I was still working in theaters, and surprisingly, that film, you'd think the title of anything Star Wars has like a huge crowd or whatnot, but that one was probably the most mediocre Star Wars film I've ever worked in all my years of movie theaters. Because many years of movie theaters I worked, we had the Star Wars films like Force Awakens, Rogue One, then later on with like Last Jedi, whatnot. I was still in theaters at that time, but I just remember Solo doing the most mediocre out of all of them.
Yeah, I mean that's because we are gearing towards another Skywalker thing with Anakin Skywalker, but this time I don't mind it because as Star Wars fans, we've always wanted to see Ahsoka with Anakin in live action.
Yes.
And also there's some closure that's happening between both of those characters that maybe Ahsoka has never gotten ever since Anakin turned to the dark side and became Darth Vader. Sorry, spoilers.
And that well people know, and now Mike, now that you say it, because of this episode, this makes me have more encouragement to watch Revenge of the Sith. next week over Attack of the Clones because I want to. I'm like I want to revisit the dark side of Anakin judgment before we get further. Now, kind of.
Hey, can I ask you 4 other really strong experts? And John, I'm very impressed by some of the words. I almost am like, shoot, I really need to write some Wikipedia entries down just to get these names right. It's like shit. I'm calling Shin the actress when I should really. But maybe I'm too focused on actors. But one of the things that I find intriguing about this, and I could be wrong on this, but you tell me. But and you just were talking about it with some of the things like Darth Maul, and even to some degree what I think Anakin turned into, especially with Darth Vader at his most evil. You didn't like them, and you kind of felt sorry for the stormtroopers, and Domhnall Gleeson getting sort of done away with, or whatever else. There didn't seem to be much room for understanding that either you were completely on board with these awful evil people, or you kind of were a good guy on the other side. One of the things I like about this so far that I think is very intriguing is I find that Baylan and Shin do not strike me as black and white characters. They strike me as very gray characters. Like even when Baylan was sort of trying to sort of, bring sort of Sabine to the other side, and and kind of saying you might like it almost. I felt that was a pretty good pitch. Like he was actually pretty smart and charming, and maybe they've got a good dental plan too, that it wasn't quite as dark as we all thought. It is like you're all under this kind of crushing tyranny of the Emperor and Darth Vader, and they even make fun of that on the Star Wars sketches they do on Saturday Night Live with Kylo Ren, undercover boss and stuff. But like, and you mentioned about like, does anybody turn? I mean, I think Shin is kind of vulnerable. I almost could see her maybe becoming potentially good or coming to the other side, because I think she is there for, I think, noble reasons, that she wants to be kind of learning and making a difference. And maybe that's from Baylan, and maybe that isn't. But I don't know. I ask you guys because it seems to me very, just a couple, 4 episodes in, to be very gray, where I think a lot of early Star Wars, or at least my recollection of Star Wars, has always been a little bit more black and white.
They seem pretty evil because they want to bring in, Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's going to basically bring in a new heir to the Empire, which is going to, send the universe into total destruction. But they could be doing that for reasons that they believe is good, yet they are evil. It is funny how they never sort of implicitly say whether they're Sith or they're
they have orange lightsabers. Don't forget that. They aren't.
Yeah,
they aren't Sith. They are not.
No.
Well, and they murdered a bunch of New Republic people. So
yeah,
we got Hayden in the group now. Hey, Hayden, what's happening?
Hello,
yes,
Hayden.
Said, not Hayden Christensen, but Hayden Mears.
Hayden, did you change your name just so you could be really on top of this?
He's coming out. He's coming from us from the world between worlds right now. This is Hayden from.
If you'd come in the last 5 minutes, I would have been really suspicious.
So, Jeff, you were saying that Shin is kind of like teetering on the...
Well, I guess ultimately what I'm saying is that maybe I was being too mealy-mouthed about it, but I find there's a gray area with both Shin and Baylan. Like, I don't find them hissably evil when they come on. Like, I might buy into where they're coming from on a certain level. I mean, grant you, they're not good, but they're not so hissably bad that you go, oh, why would anybody want to ever follow somebody who's such a tyrant? No. I don't feel that from them.
My thoughts on Baylan, I think Baylan has more shades of gray to him than I think that we're used to. I think what I really like about him is, he's not a great guy, but he's got a moral code. He follows a set of ethics, which makes him very interesting, because it's like, he'll kill people, but he's a man of his word. He's shown time and again that he values his word. He values he values sticking to your word and sticking to truth. So it kind of makes him, he has a moral code that he is very much sticking to. And I think that that's really compelling, because it doesn't put him in the red or on the Sith side or the Jedi side. It kind of puts him in the middle, which I think Filoni is doing on purpose. I don't think, I think
what this entire show has been about, honestly. Ahsoka told you in the first episode that she's a gray Jedi.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
She doesn't necessarily follow the code. She used the Jedi like mind weaver trick on what's her name to get stuff out of her head, just like Maul does.
Right.
He's not really like exactly a good person, and she knows it. And yet she's taking a Mandalorian under her wing, and it's going to go bad. I mean, it went bad immediately, obviously.
What I did like about this episode,
Oh man, the direction they're going with this series is fantastic. I'm just
they honestly, if this episode was not what it was, I would be having questions about the show right now, because it's like it would be halfway over and nothing would, but a lot of shit happened, and it was all really good shit. It was compelling shit. I think that Sabine and Ahsoka are probably going to clash over what Sabine did, which is going to be some pretty compelling character stuff. I don't know how Ahsoka is going to figure out that Sabine did it, but there's going to be some tension down the road.
I feel, even from getting a little more of the characterization with Balin on this episode, like there's that moment in this episode where there's a conversation basically, in the whole thing between like Ahsoka and Balin, and then Sabine as well. Like it's almost like there's a scenario, and even Balin says something. It's along the lines of where it's like he can't really turn away from who his superior is, because otherwise there's no victory. So then in my head, I'm just thinking, okay, so unfortunately, it's like the side of him being the antagonist is because of someone having much more superior power over him, kind of thing, and there's no way out of it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say is, Balin, it's like he's the reluctant soldier in that he's getting paid by the witch, and therefore he has his code. Okay, you hired me. This is what I'm doing. Regardless of how he might deeply feel, he's got a code, like his word. I'm serving you. I'm going to serve you. We're going to get Thrawn.
Yeah.
And they've shown that the Republic has no clue what they're doing. And that's the one thing that's been running through. So it's almost as if Balin's going, Thrawn might not be great, but we're going to have a hell of a lot more structure to the galaxy with Thrawn than we ever are going to have with the Republic, which is in chaos right now. I mean, that was the whole kind of approach with the Emperor in some respects, is that you saw that in Rebels. Some people were like, we don't exactly like the Empire, but I've got structure. We've got soldiers patrolling. I could do business. I might not always like my business, but it's
Mark. I think the phrase is Mussolini made the trains run on time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
For me, Balin really highlights the difference between the word villain and antagonist. I think Morgan and Thrawn are villains, right? They're pretty cut and dry. But Balin is an antagonist purely in the sense that he's just opposing the protagonists.
Right.
But he's not villainous. He does villainous things, but he's not a villain.
Well, why does he want to bring about the Empire once more if he's not, a villain?
Mike, I think it's more complex than that. I don't think it's that black and white.
That's what I mean. I think there's a very complicated reason why he wants to bring them back. And we're probably going to find out maybe later on in the show why he's going to be that way.
And Mike, the one thing that comes to my mind, especially after that with Balin, I'm thinking about that quote from Fellowship of the Ring with Gandalf. The quote, "When did Saruman devise reason for madness?" Now I'm asking, is there a reason why Balin is still reasoning for madness going forward? I'm sure there is, kind of thing.
He doesn't see it as madness is the thing.
No, he doesn't. But it's like, what does it? For him.
But you had those people in the Empire when the Empire was huge. We saw it Rebels, who didn't see the Empire as bad. They just saw it as another governing body. They didn't see them as good or bad, even though the Empire was doing bad things behind the scenes, and we all know that. They didn't, from their little world, as far as they know, okay, these guys are in charge now, and hey, my supply lanes are safe. I'm making money.
Yeah.
I'm living my life.
Yeah.
They aren't bothering me. So, Balin in some respects doesn't necessarily maybe see the full evil of the Empire just because it was head by the Emperor, sure. But from his perspective, he's looking at it just as that we had control under them.
He's practical.
We've got chaos under the Republic. So, I like control. That's why I'm going with this guy, and that's what I like about it. And for as much as everybody loves to crap on Last Jedi, I personally loved Last Jedi. I'm in a minority, I know, but
no, I like it too.
But
I like Last Jedi as well. Much better than The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes, exactly. and what I'm looking at Ahsoka is what they were trying to start to lean towards with Last Jedi, but being done and handled a lot better than what Last Jedi did with it. But it's still what they're leaning towards, which is like Sabine. We see it with Sabine. Anybody could actually be in tune with the Force at some angle, respect, whatever, that they just need the discipline and training. There is no black or white with it. That's what they do with the Rey character. She goes into the pit in Last Jedi, and Luke's like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, I'm looking for answers. She didn't see the pit as evil as either Sith or Jedi. She's like, I got answers down there. And she found out what it was and moved on. She didn't get corrupted by it. And here we've got Ahsoka, who is in that gray area. She sees the flaws on both sides. You got Sabine, who has shown no Force ability whatsoever. She's a good fighter, yet they're still taking her on as a Padawan. And you've got Balin and his apprentice, who aren't really Sith. She's more Sith than him. But at the same time, they're doing bad things, but they're also not like just choking guys because they didn't listen to their orders. So, I mean, we've got a lot of characters who are just characters.
There's so much going on. That's why I said in the group chat, I was like, honestly, one of them's got to die or be taken out of the picture in the next couple episodes because it's
it will happen. It will happen.
I think I don't have any specific predictions, but I don't see. I mean, I could make a case for a lot of them sticking around. I couldn't make a case for Balin dying yet. I couldn't make a case for. I could maybe make a case for Shin, but she hasn't really been developed yet. So I don't know if they take her out of the equation without really giving us, because she said maybe like 4 sentences throughout the whole. Like, she has not had a lot of dialogue. We do not know what her deal is. We kind of get the sense that she is kind of just going along with Balin, but she doesn't 100% agree with him. Like, you kind of get the sense that she's ready to defect if she needs to.
Right. I mean, and I feel like with Balin, there's going to be some reveal that the New Republic did something to him, which is why he killed all those guys in the hallway so heartlessly, and that's why he wants the Empire to rise up again.
He's another Jango Fett clone.
He's got a beef. He's got a beef with the New Republic for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question, Mike? I know I don't want to be the host here. I do have another question for you and for everyone on the panel. Like I said, he was more learned than me on this, but I can't help but feel very much so, and it reminds me of when I saw the first 3, that there are commentaries about religion in here and maybe even fanaticism. And I think one of the things I like about this show is it's kind of asking, do you have to be a Jedi to be able to be good and sort of a good fighter, or do you have to be full Sith to also sort of embrace the Empire and some of those kind of things? Because I find again that gray area here where I think there is almost a purity test that becomes a commentary a lot of times, how religious sort of tropes and ideology gets out of the hands of people. Like, you can't meet this perfection, and so people get turned off and maybe leave the church. And I feel some of those themes here, like there's almost a piousness on both sides. And I'm not suggesting that, Christianity is as bad as whatever other non-religions are out there, or any other, whether it's Buddhism or anything else. But I find that they seem to be making comments about how sort of these orders, if you will, these orders of people with their monk-like existences and their clothing and their learnedness, and well, she hasn't done this and he hasn't done that, and he'll never be this, and she's just a Mandalorian. It seems very snotty, and I think that stuff makes me wonder if this isn't sort of reading between the lines, a little bit of commentary on religion. But
Oh,
maybe-
absolutely.
I think so. I mean, because the whole reason Anakin Skywalker's life was sort of ruined was because when someone needed to listen to him, when he was in love with Padme and he was having visions of her dying, they couldn't, because it was almost like taking a vow of chastity as a Jedi.
Yeah.
Also,
Where-
let's not use hedging language. He did ruin his life. His life
did,
was
yes.
ruined. He did not
Oh, yeah.
ruin it. He
still killed kids, and that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was the beginning of his crimes, just to
Mhm.
be clear. Like that was
Yeah.
the start of it. But I think go ahead, Tarek, go ahead.
I mean, even that, like, then even what, you're like, even from those moments, like even of Anakin when he goes to the dark side, thinking back on the Sith, which hopefully we'll revisit Hayden, hopefully, if we make it to that kind of thing. But I'm just thinking, like even when they get into politics, like how even there's that conversation, that film where Obi-Wan tells Anakin that his allegiance is towards democracy, kind of thing. It just kind of shows how like I feel like the whole political approach and whatnot to those sticking to their sides is what's playing the big role in why there's certain outcomes with certain characters or ones we don't know yet.
Well, I mean, I think what Ahsoka's arc is telling us is that, it's fine if you want an ideological structure. I mean, that's why some people need the ideological structure of religion, of organized religion. But there's also nothing wrong with forging your own way spiritually.
Mhm.
That's the part of Ahsoka right there, is that she sees both sides of it,
Right.
and she doesn't even want to cut through it or destroy either one of them. She
Yes.
walked away from it years and years ago and keeps getting pulled back into it.
Yes.
And she just keeps getting frustrated. And now I think we're seeing her at a point where she's just like, all right, I'm going to train this Mandalorian. Obviously, I'm still thinking in the back of my head that Hera asked her to train Sabine so that Jason has somebody to train him.
Yeah.
Like she is. We haven't touched on this yet, but I think Hera is scared to death of what Jason might become. If he's not trained either well or correctly or at all, or by somebody that he knows.
Because he will be. Yeah, he will probably
a
be
lot of stuff that we haven't talked about in the show. Like we keep going back to Balin, but like that right there is like the heart of Ahsoka. Is like she's not good, she's not bad. She sees both sides, and she's fucking sick of it at this point.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Good.
No,
She's
no,
gonna do
go
her-
ahead.
she's going to have her own agenda and try to get through this mess, whatever means necessary. And obviously, the whole Sabine situation was
Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, because one of the other things that ran through my head, and this is where I take a little bit of a stranger path, but I don't know if you guys know the Stephen Sondheim musical "Into the Woods."
Yeah,
There's a famous song
I've
at
seen
the
it
end.
I've seen it many
Okay,
times.
I love that. It's one of my favorites of his. And anyway, there's a song that's kind of the big one at the end called, "Children will listen. Careful the things you say, children will listen. Children will listen. Careful the things you do, children will see and learn from you." I think this is definitely setting up sort of three strains of parenting, if you will, and it sort of became a little bit of a theme as we talked about in the Mandalorian season 3, maybe throughout. But what are their charges going to do? Like Shin seems a little bit enigmatic so far, but she's watching and she's wondering what her play is and where she fits in. And I think that Sabine feels already like, well, no matter who I am, you're always going to be discriminated against me. So maybe it's better for me to be rebellious, once a rebel, all those kind of lines. And I think what you just said about General Hera is right. I mean, they bring in the kid episode, like how many characters do we need in this? But the kid is there to like, what is that young boy going to learn from all this?
Yeah.
What is he going to see? And again, I loved your point, John, about like Ahsoka seen it all and sort of sick of it. She's a little bit like the Pale Rider that Clint Eastwood paid, where is she a preacher? Did she used to be a preacher? Is she even alive? Is that an avenging angel? It doesn't matter, but it's like, I've seen the way to do it and be nice, isn't it? And I'm gonna shoot you down and hit you with this big stick.
I've seen some shit phase. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
makes
there's
you
a little bit of that
question.
I don't give a shit phase that you just mentioned, John, about Ahsoka, and I think that's what will that teach her charge, or maybe even Shin. I mean, I'm not sure that Shin is entirely buying into all that she's been sort of assigned thus far either. So I don't know. There's a lot of levels, a lot of characters, as you said, but that sort of B level of religion and parenting, I think, is very fascinating about here, and being very strongly developed some 4 episodes in.
Yeah, they've got and can I just spotlight Kevin Kiner's music? His score is so good.
I mentioned that last week.
Yeah. And now, is he the same guy who scored the Clone Wars
And
Rebels?
Rebels. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I thought so, because it sounded a bit like his stuff, but with some orchestration actually
So
added.
he
to
was
it.
handpicked by George Lucas. Like he was like George Lucas handpicked him for. I've talked with Kevin Kiner before, and he told me that George Lucas picked him for the job of Clone Wars. So because this was before the Lucasfilm acquisition in Disney.
And he does very well. What, again, I'll bring him up. The 2 A Star Wars Story films did not, in that he still works in the original themes we know and love, but also gives it his own bit of spin.
Yes.
Where literally you have the asteroid chase redone in Solo, like almost beat for beat. I know I'm a big soundtrack geek guy too, and so so you listening to this, like with Rebels, I was blown away with the music for Rebels when they did the episode. Here's a spoiler, folks. When they did the episode where they tracked down Rex and they're hunting the worm, and he literally pulled cues from Jaws for the music for that episode. I'm like, what kid? No kid's gonna get this reference.
That's why like his scores it's enjoyable for everybody, right? Like people like us are like, holy shit, like Kevin Kiner is coming out all cylinders. Like
way better than the score from Obi-Wan, which it had there was, I will say, I did love the song like when they're actually battling with the duel. But it felt like that was like the one song where all the effort was put in. The rest of it felt like a bunch of synthesizers, and it was just awful. Like this, like it's Star Warsy, but it's also its own thing. Like when Ahsoka is fighting Balin Orso, they have a lot of that instrumentation you'd find in an old samurai film.
Yeah,
that's playing its themes, and it's kind of getting you into that, like those sort of like little hints and cues. And especially at the end when we see Anakin, is playing this hopeful thing, but then it ends with about 4 notes of the Imperial March.
I loved that. Yeah.
Have you noticed too that all the trailers for Ahsoka pretty much only showed footage up through episode 4?
Yeah.
I don't think we did anything past episode 4.
It's hopeful.
You do get one shot of Thrawn in
yes, you do.
The
That's
trailer. You do get one shot of Thrawn,
but it's a back shot, right?
Right.
It's a shot.
There is a front shot, and it's in our thumbnail too. Unfortunately,
is there? Okay.
But he kind of looks like blue Elon Musk a
little bit.
I'm so glad they got Lars Mikkelsen back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Once you hear him speak, I think people will stop with the Elon Musk stuff. Well, they probably won't. It's the internet.
And that's what I liked about Rebels, because that's what surprised me too. Was I heard about Thrawn? I didn't read the books. I don't get a chance to read a lot, and there were so many after a while, especially after Heir to the Empire.
The expanded universe is huge.
It was huge, and it just overwhelmed me. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to dive into that. But when I saw Rebels, it had the introduction to Thrawn. I loved Thrawn. Thrawn was like one of my favorite villains because, he was not what I expected. Everybody, built him up, and I'm like, okay, what kind of bad guy is he? And he's this tactician. He's basically just a really good tactician.
He's a genius.
He's genius. He's not really Force. I thought maybe, he's with the Sith or dark side. No, nope. He is a genius tactician, and he thinks 8 steps ahead. And I loved the character like that, the way they played him.
He shows you that it's scary when somebody is always 8 steps ahead. Like he's scary because he is anticipating everybody. He sees it as a game of chess that he's already won. Right. Like,
and so it makes me wonder how he's going to take being, I know this is all speculative, but how he's going to take being rescued by the witch, because the way his brain works, it's going to be an interesting pairing.
Unless this was part of his plan.
Unless it's part of his plan. The way I see it, though, is that she's going to be going into this thinking one thing, and he's going to have his own agenda, and he's just going to use her as a pawn to get back to the galaxy. But she thinks, oh, he's going to, he's the second coming to all this.
No.
Yeah, and he will have no trouble 86ing her into the airlock as soon as he's friggin' done with her. In fact, he might, because of her powers and whatnot, she could be a threat down the road.
That's a good point.
Oppose him.
She is the most disposable, I feel like, out of the people that he has in his circle, like Baylan, Shin. I feel like that we still have more development for Baylan and Shin. I feel like if they're going to kill somebody, they would kill Morgan.
Yeah, she would be because she's just kind of straight up like evil Night Sister. Although Night Sisters aren't evil, we had that Night Sister from Jedi Fallen Order, who is actually good. So we'll see about that.
But no, she's not exactly evil, but their power definitely scares a lot of people, including Baylan.
Yeah.
Baylan, it's always hilarious that you've got the Jedi who use the Force, and he's sitting there going, witchcraft. And I'm like, look who's talking.
Okay, Mr. Orange Lightsaber, I'm gonna go around and kill everybody. Sure, witchcraft. You're the one pushing people in the middle of the air using the Force.
I do have a question for the group. It's just going to be hypothetical, but what do you think is going to be on Thrawn's to-do list when he gets back to the galaxy?
He's going to bring in fleets of the Empire and start attacking. Or no, he's going to have to
attack, though.
I was about to say he's going to attack them from the inside. The New Republic, he'd probably send some spies in there to gather intel about them, and then
I think the point of the show is to retcon the sequels, right?
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
Do whatever they can to pull shit in from the movies to make them make more sense and make them more rewatchable. And they'll be like, oh, okay, he immediately goes to Camino because he's got plans for cloning going forward.
And like you said,
he immediately goes to the destroyed Death Stars and starts pulling kyber crystals. He has a plan coming back. We don't know what it's going to be. Eventually, he builds, or we think he becomes the First Order. Blah blah blah. Knights of Ren. Maybe they're related to Sabine Wren. We don't know that yet. Like, there's a lot of stuff, and there's only 4 episodes left.
Yeah,
and like you said,
Kylo Ren got his name from Sabine Wren.
Maybe.
And like you said, John, kind of thing, like what they're doing to make these things more rewatchable. That probably explains why they're bringing these trilogies back to theaters. They want people back in their Star Wars mindset that they've probably fallen out of. They want them to get their knowledge back, or even take their kids who have not been around that time frame, expose them to that world.
You guys are new. I've said this to Mike a few times. I honestly think that the First Order is not the Empire. It's the Mandalorians running shit.
Yeah. I could see that. That's an interesting.
Setting that up through Sabine going and basically Sabine and Thrawn team up with and use Ezra to become the First Order. Holy cow! That'd make the sequels rewatchable.
It could be that. I mean, I'm not sure. That one kind of goes into
why does Kylo Ren have a force power where he can stop phaser bolts in midair? Because he's Mandalorian.
Because you could write whatever force power you want.
And the Jedi, they'll never see that coming. Rewatchable, dude. He did it with this Clone Wars. It took him 7 seasons plus a movie plus another half a season. He can do that with one series with 8 episodes of Ahsoka.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before. Dave Filoni is Star Wars' janitor, where he comes in, he sees the mess that George Lucas has left behind with the prequels, and then he cleans it up, and then he makes it all watchable again, where you actually care about what happens to these characters.
George Lucas didn't make the mess.
Oh, what, with the prequels?
No, I mean, like with the sequels, the sequel cleanup, making the sequels watchable. George Lucas didn't have anything to do with
it. But Dave Filoni is going to clean that up too now. Yeah, that's his job. You find some terrible writing, bring in Dave Filoni to fix it.
He planted the seeds of the last Mandalorian season, throwing the Darth Maul references in there.
That's right.
What's his face? The head bad guy that got his ass beat by the man. That last episode just fell apart for me anyway.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
when you find out it was just a bad guy trying to clone himself.
that they can build on, and blah blah blah. But yeah, like
Well, but the biggest thing to come out of Mandalorian season 3, in all honesty, is we knew Thrawn was coming back, and they pretty much confirmed that Thrawn, it is back by the end of Mandalorian season 3. So we know we kind of know when Ahsoka takes place. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. You're right, it is cleanup. It's like Filoni maybe couldn't do something quite original by himself, but he's able to come in and look at the plot holes and come up with feasible ways to either fill them, use the good bits. Like I said, he's using some of the bits from The Last Jedi, as much as people dislike it. The idea that you could train almost anybody to be a Jedi, and that not all Jedis are just good or bad. Those themes were throughout The Last Jedi, and it's here for sure in Ahsoka. So he's picking those bits out, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Until you dropped it, now that you mentioned that the Mandalorians are the First Order, that I could almost see, because being a Mandalore isn't exactly a race; it's a religion.
Yeah,
so that easily could be First Order.
Yeah,
that could easily be First Order, and First Order would have nothing to do with the Emperor's plans, because the galaxy's just got all these components going on.
Who was he hiding from? He was hiding from the First Order.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Maybe.
He could have been.
Going forward, maybe. I don't know.
He could have been.
If I was
gotta get going.
I would do. That's the direction that I would take it. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Ezra, because that was the kind of the big question mark in Rebels when I was watching it, going, I love this character. I love the fact we have these two Jedis. I don't remember these guys mentioned anywhere, because I'm old school trilogy. I'm with Jeff. I saw Empire in the theater. I was 2.5 years old when I saw original Star Wars, very first movie I ever saw. But I watched those religiously. Those are in my DNA, and I'm like, how are they going to explain having these two Jedis who we haven't really heard before? They did it well. Ezra gets sucked, with Thrawn into another galaxy, and was it Jason dies, or not Jason?
Caleb.
Kanan, thank you, Caleb. Yeah, he dies. So I'm like, okay, so that makes sense. Now when Ezra comes back, it'll be interesting to see what they do with his character and how they work that into the lore and the mythos, of everything, because he's going to be in the middle of the stuff for the galaxy with the rebels and with the New Republic, and that he's not going to be able to just fade away like an Obi-Wan into the desert.
No, and it's interesting with this show. We don't know where they're going to go, because we ended it with the world between worlds, that was something I was asking. Are they going to go there? Are they going to do that? And then when they do, you go, holy shit. They're about to introduce time travel to Star Wars, something I'm not exactly thrilled about, but at the same time, if they handle it correctly, it won't work like traditional time travel, where someone will go back in time, or there's a multiverse
connection to the Force. It's not time travel.
Yeah.
It's so well. I remember there was an episode of Rebels where Ahsoka was fighting Vader, and then Ezra pulled her out and saved her, and this is sort of the same thing where Ahsoka was fighting Balin. And by the way, Balin is far from a forgettable villain, because first off, I mean, yes, we don't know if he's exactly a villain, but also, like, we've always seen this. We've seen Ahsoka defeat Maul. We've seen Ahsoka almost defeat everyone. Balin took her down in one fight. So she's going to have to learn something from Anakin on how to fight correctly.
Well,
she hurt her hand though.
The only I was going to say,
sabers.
She hurt her hand, and her whole mission was to stop the map, was not to fight Balin. So she was more distracted. So I could see where you could explain that away, to where if it was just an all-out focused fight between the two, I think it goes a bit differently. But she had three things going on at once. Defend herself against Balin, take out the map, and what the heck is happening to Sabine? She had those going on all at once. So,
Mike, I gotta go. But
Okay.
nice seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you later. By the way, I saw Jericho Mile. It was we'll talk about it. It was great.
Yeah, I haven't watched. I'm behind on my podcast homework, so I'll watch it and get back to you.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. All right. We'll see you later.
Right.
Bye, guys.
So,
Goodbye.
I'm just saying that you could possibly explain it away. That's why Ahsoka maybe got bested a bit by Balin in this fight. Is that all his job was to defend it against the orb. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's
know.
true. She was distracted. There were those things. I'm just wondering how they're going to explain Anakin now that he's like what 20 years younger, although he kind of still like the de-aging looks a little weird on Hayden Christensen.
That's the Battlefront, Anakin.
Yeah.
You noticed the Lego Star Wars haircut, right?
And
Like
and
it's
John
worn
and
down.
John and Mike, I've told you this, but I have not told you this, Mark or Jeff, years ago, like 13 years ago now, ironically. I actually ran into Hayden Christensen. It was ironically in like Southfield, Michigan. I don't know why he was there. I think as the other actors he was dating at the time was like his hometown. But Hayden Christensen is like, he's not tall at all, like they made him look, nothing like that. And it was kind of awkward, but also fun because he was easy to talk to. But he's just standing in the corner by like one of the garbage cans outside the hotel, just chain smoking. So I'm like 16 years old, but he's like all laid back talking while he has his cigarettes. And I'm thinking, well, no wonder why you probably stay so thin. You kind of, I didn't say that, but I'm just thinking. But he was cool. He was fun to talk with, though, kind of.
He was on the Oppenheimer diet.
Hayden Christensen unfortunately suffered at the hands of Lucas direction, is what ended up happening with his character. And don't get me wrong, and I've had this conversation with many of my friends. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, Star Wars has been in my DNA since I was 2.5. Okay, he builds fantastical worlds. George Lucas comes up with a great story and fantastical world building. When it comes to direction and dialogue, he needs to put someone else in the chair and not do it himself. And I think the prequels suffered from that. He had all these great elements and all this stuff that he could pull from that he set up in the original trilogy, but he was also directing and producing, and that you could get a little full of yourself and get a little blind to what you're actually doing. And I think with Hayden Christensen, Hayden needed more direction or better direction than what he got for Clone Wars and Sith, or some direction, especially being a young kid. And even to an extent, Osmond, Haley Joel, playing the young Anakin. He needed
that was
Jake Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd.
Sorry, Jake Lloyd playing the young Anakin. He needed better direction too. I think the prequels are better with a better director. You can keep the ideas and stories of the world there and all that, but they needed a better director and maybe someone else to go over the script.
Yep. And I'll piggyback off of that. When we saw that Phantom Menace trailer, it didn't look like anything from Star Wars we've seen before.
Right.
But it was amazing. We're like, oh my God, this is something I haven't seen. What is this going to be? And he had all the elements for greatness again. But unfortunately, these movies were more reliant on dialogue and acting. And because of that, that's where they started to fall apart.
And Marco, and even though you did mention Haley Joel Osment, however, he was supposed to play Anakin.
Thank you.
Like,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He never got a call back, but I think it's probably a blessing he didn't. Given Jake Lloyd's career, I remember I attended like the Chicago Comic-Con. Jake Lloyd was there, and I guess apparently Jake Lloyd was at his desk, and people kept asking him the questions he hated, so he would just get up from the table and be like, "I'm not going to do this," kind of thing, because people would keep asking him, "What happened since? Why aren't you not with it anymore?" And he spent like the one thing he, like, instead of getting fame, it's like all he did was act, and he played young Anakin. He didn't do anything wrong. Then the world gave him shit for it.
Yeah.
Kind of
well, I mean, it's kind of sad that a bunch of people were going around giving shit to a 9-year-old kid.
Yes.
Someone of that age, like, look, was he the best actor? No, I've seen Jingle All the Way. He's not. But, that doesn't excuse the fact that people are going around and berating a child. Like
And-
that's just some cowardice shit to do.
And apparently, many of those actors and actresses that were younger, when they were doing the Star Wars movies, like Natalie Portman even said she didn't get to attend the Phantom Menace premiere because she was still like a senior in high school. So she's like, I can't go. That's my finals week. So it's like the career, they have the nostalgia with them being in the franchise, but have the more positive nostalgia. And sadly, Jake Lloyd continues on with the negative.
Natalie Portman, you wouldn't really even have to DH,
which is
same.
Unfortunate, sadly, because Phantom Menace still has a fan base.
I'm wondering, just to hit on the Lucas thing for a second, because one of Lucas's first big movies his first big hit movie was American Graffiti.
Right.
And he was terrific with actors. He was terrific with the writing there. I wonder if part of it is if this genre doesn't demand less dialogue. I mean, I think for every, Ray Stevenson or Alec Guinness or Christopher Lee, you've got, making the hoariest of dialogue sound pretty good, or, they're turgid sort of short threats sing because they're British. If these things wouldn't be better taking a page from Kurosawa, who clearly filmed for the world to watch because they weren't laid down with dialogue, or even Sergio Leone. I mean, Henry Fonda is one of the greatest talking actors in the history of cinema, and yet in Once Upon a Time in America, he probably had 10 lines. I just think if these people, and that's one thing I love about Rosario Dawson. She's kind of a spitfire, and she's always kind of big, and that mouth and her tongue and her big lips. I mean, they almost are like a Muppet creation. But here, that's all reined in, and I find her she pulls me towards her watching her because she's just sitting there, and when she's still, I think she's so much more interesting. It's like Mad Max. He didn't say much in Road Warrior, and he was just an interesting presence in there. I find when this genre, this franchise, even these series, just let the music, let the sitting there and like these interesting characters and their look and sort of the in-between moments work, it's really effective. And I think when they suddenly have to spout all this exposition and say, why are we doing this? Where are we going to? What are we doing here? It gets a little bit like, okay, now we're spoon feeding the Jeff Yorks or the 6-year-olds out there who don't know this all that well.
Well, let's not look at also what Lucas ended up doing to one of the best side characters in all of sci-fi history. The reason, and I come from the original cut before special edition world, so the reason why everybody loved Boba Fett in the first 3 films for so long is because he looked badass. He didn't say much. He could bring it, and there was a mystery about him. Special edition comes along and they make him a pimp daddy for one, which just oh my god, that scene where he's like, I'll talk to you later, type of thing with the Twi'lek girls. No, what made Boba Fett cool was he's this guy in the background. The most line he gets is when he's with Vader. And he goes, he's no good to be dead. That's about the only thing we ever hear Boba Fett say. But
and he's giving Darth Vader shit.
Yes.
Two movies. He doesn't say anything.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like one of the wonders of Ahsoka is they give you Shin and they give you Balin, and they give you that question mark again. Like Star Wars hasn't really done that in a very long time, and to have them do that, like they did it with Maul a little bit. You didn't really know where he was. I mean, you did. But you didn't. Right. We knew he was a Sith, but we didn't know what was going on with Phantom Menace. We had no idea back then. We knew he was a bad guy. He was Darth Vader-ish. But these two with the question marks over the head are very, very similar to exactly what you're saying. It's just like, who are these guys? Let's breathe some life into them. Like, oh my, this series is just it is like some of the best Star Wars that we've seen, and it's all of the same of the best Star Wars that we've seen. I'm just.
It's the Clone Wars plus Rebels part. I guess we could say 5
and literally like the parallels of it. Like you saw the Anakin and Obi-Wan farewell. You saw almost the exact same farewell when Sabine and Ahsoka were saying goodbye to Huyang.
Yeah.
You guys better stick together. You do better together. It's like, oh my God, like something really bad is about to happen. And then very, very similarly with the Maul fight and the Obi-Wan fight, the very last time they meet, very similar to how Ahsoka ends that night, Knight of Ren or whatever that dude is, that Inquisitor. Like she just takes her time with it, waits for him to make his move. Jeff York, just watch that one scene. You don't have to watch 7 seasons of.
I'm up to speed. I got it. No, you're right. And just
in Maul scene where Maul is like, oh my goodness, that is one of the best Star Wars moment ever, and to have that almost recreated in live action with Ahsoka and this guy that was fun to watch. Like I love the parallels that he's doing. Like we might not actually see these scenes recreated. Like me and Mike were talking when this first started. We're like, we want to see that temple scene with Ahsoka versus Vader. Like, no, actually, let's just see like more of this. Like some of the best Star Wars that we've ever seen. Again, but not like The Force Awakens, where it's like, okay, cool, you know, the Millennium Falcon's flying through some stuff and you know gets out of it and blows up a big thing again. Okay, cool. Like it's not that kind of Star Wars rewatching stuff over, but giving us the best of the best again, and I'm good with it, man. This is
it's just what we were hoping for. We were hoping for that live action animation, and that's exactly what we got with Dave Filoni at the helm of this show, because Dave Filoni understands his Star Wars. He understands how to write around something that maybe wasn't, you know, so well written in terms of the dialogue department. You know, they like in the Clone Wars, they actually established a love story between Obi-Wan Kenobi and then the person who ran Mandalore before it became a warlord state again. Right. You know, you actually saw how Obi-Wan was once in love and also reached out to Anakin and said, hey, I know, you know, where you're coming from. Let me help you if there's something going on. And Anakin shuts him down. And you also see how Anakin becomes a great leader through the Clone Wars. So with this, maybe we'll see in live action the Anakin that the people of the Clone Wars got to see, but people who didn't get to see it get to see. And it's like we get to see maybe a little more Hayden Christensen with a little more personality, or at least some better dialogue to work with here.
I agree. By the way, guys, I unfortunately have to log off, but it was great discussing Star Wars with you, and I will see you at the next episode. Again, thank you, Mike, Mark, Jeff, John. I will see you next week. You have a good night and a good weekend. I'll see you soon.
All right. Take it easy.
Take it easy. See you around. Bye.
See, and I think you guys all hit it on the head. There's nothing wrong with history repeating itself in Star Wars. In fact, it has over and over again. It depends on how subtle and how you approach it. And that's one thing Filoni is doing right that Lucas seemed to kind of miss, is that you can still give the same feeling, the same setup, heck, even the same type of action, but still give it a different setting, a different approach to it, to where it still feels interesting and it doesn't feel like you just copied and pasted this fight scene to this movie, you know, like you did. You know, I remember when they built up Sith, epic fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and it was, don't get me wrong, it absolutely was, you know, kind of what you were hoping for. But in all honesty, the point where I have the high ground, and where he actually gets, you know, mauled, no pun intended, that was kind of anticlimactic in the sin. You know, the way it happened, it's like, wait, they fought all of this way and Anakin makes this move now. It's like, you could have done it differently, to where he's slowly lopping limbs off of Anakin, who won't stop, rather than Anakin making one dumb move and him just going loop and cut off 3, you know.
Looking back shows you that Obi-Wan was lying the whole time. The high ground is not an advantage.
No,
it's a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's how he defeated Darth Maul. He leaped up from above and
ropes you into thinking that the high ground, like, give me the high ground, go ahead. But he knows he's at a disadvantage, so he's going to be extra defensive and wait for you to make your move, and then get you. You know exactly what. And Anakin thought he could see through the lies of the Jedi. He could not. He was a fool lying there with 3 limbs missing, looking up and being like, "Oh shit, you got me."
You know, it's one of those things.
He was lying the whole time.
Yeah.
John, we've gotten to a point, I think, in film where so often, because it's action adventure, that's the genre, or I mean, you can say sci-fi, but at the end of the day, it's kind of action adventure, that we think it has to be something that is physical prowess in the sense of brute strength. And that, I think, was a little bit of an unfortunate part of Christopher Nolan's Batman series, is that we always saw him as this kind of brawler, but not so much as the supposedly brilliant detective that the Batman is also supposed to be. Thankfully, the animated series couldn't show that much violence, so they had to play him as a detective more. I always thought in Star Wars that Obi-Wan his age should have made him victorious. Like, he should have had some sort of strategy where he knew, some sort of move or some sort of even trap. I mean, something where he would have been like, that's why you don't fuck with the old guy in the room, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying that because I'm getting older, but still, I mean, I think that, again, age and wisdom affects, or at least strategy. I mean, again, I don't want to necessarily bring it back to the Road Warrior, but I love the Road Warrior, where they set up one of the greatest car chases, where they're trying to get that big tanker and they're chasing it down this thing for 20 minutes and you don't know how the hell it was shot and everybody's dying and all this kind of shit. And then at the end, it's strategy. It's strategy. They're the decoy. They're the one full of sand. Meanwhile, the other gas tank is way over here and nobody's following it. I wish that Star Wars would sometimes do some of that here, where there was a little bit more of like, oh, those Jedis, it is a Jedi mind trick. They just pulled the greatest trick since the Prestige or something, instead of like, I'm more powerful, look at me, keep whamming you like you're a pinata. It's like, that's just brute strength. There's no skill in that.
Right. I think he kind of knew through
Float
training.
like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Come on. It's the Ali idea.
I think that's why Obi-Wan was so easy to take down Anakin, that he knew through his training, like that one move that Anakin kept screwing up. So he's like, okay, we'll do the high ground move on you because I know you're going to screw it up again.
In the whole since day one.
Yeah.
So he set him up from day one. He's like, if this dude turns on me, he's going to think that's a good idea. Yeah. And I'm going to get him. Dude, the more I think about it, it's like, Obi-Wan's pretty smart. And that just goes right back to what Jeff was saying. Like, he did get him with his.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. He did.
Years and years and years was like, no, dude, the high ground. Like, seriously, the high ground. Really, the high ground.
Go for it.
Yeah. It's the best in the world. You can't get anybody when they're up there.
Yeah, because people have been arguing that for years. They're like, well, what does it matter if he had the high ground? Because when he fought against Darth Maul, he had the low ground, but then he went to the high ground and he still killed him. And it's like, well, yeah, because he knew.
And with Ahsoka, you can see her thinking. And I love the fact that they edit this to show her thinking, to show these people thinking a little bit more like, I could strike now, but maybe I'll wait. I mean, it's, whether you call it like the average house cat or Hannibal Lecter, but there's a little bit of her, I'm just studying you and figuring this out first before I show you anything.
Well, the battle, the fight between her and the Inquisitor, that he literally borrowed from Seven Samurai. If you remember the scene from Seven Samurai, when we get introduced to, and I forget the names, but anyway, the really quiet but deadly assassin guy, he's in that field with another guy, and they're standing there, and everybody's just waiting, and the tension is there because he sits there with his sword in one position, and the guy gets it, and then he changes another position in one foot, and the other guy, they're working out in their head how this fight is going. And you get that here with the Inquisitor. And I loved that. I actually got a bit of a chill. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing here. And I love that. And you get a little bit of that with Balin, not as much because she was more urgent in an urgent matter to try to stop the map. But you still get that to where it is more, I think, like you said, Jeff, it is more a New Hope lightsaber battle than it is Revenge of the Sith lightsaber battle, because you've got them measuring each other. Even though it's a faster battle, they're still measuring each other. And there's pauses. They're not constantly like, ha 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 ha, ooh, force, ooh.
Yeah, which was sort of the problem with the prequels, which was those lightsaber battles are incredible on screen, but they go on for so long, especially like when you get to episode 3, like the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's like there's lava, everything's happening around him. It's in hell. But it goes on for I think about like 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So like after you see people just hacking at each other for that long, you kind of lose the tension because you're going, okay, when are they going to actually get hit if they just keep bashing their swords against each other? And that's the thing, when they keep changing their stances, like at any time they could get hit. And that was kind of the move that Ahsoka used on that Inquisitor that, Obi-Wan used on Darth Maul in Rebels, which was, they're going to come at you with all their strength and just one, and you're dead.
Yeah, it needs to be more of a chess match than a fencing class.
Yeah. Well said. Oh, having said that, is there anything else anyone wants to say about the episode before we sign off for today?
They did also, for those who hate Last Jedi, they did also negate the Hodo, the maneuver where she used her light speed to take out the fleet of Star Destroyers. They kind of negated that in this episode. They canceled that feasible. Huh?
It was a much smaller ship. It had a huge hole in it. If it was a solid ship, it would have probably destroyed everything.
That's true.
No,
That's true.
I totally agree with you. But again, they did touch on the sequels in the previous episode when Ahsoka was outside on the starship battling.
Yeah.
It made that training sequence with Rey and Kylo and the starfighter on land make a little bit more sense.
Yep.
Like that sequence makes no sense in the film. But now going back, and I'm going to rewatch those films eventually after Ahsoka and maybe after another series or two.
Hey, can Mike, can I quickly pull the three experts here? Is Mary Elizabeth Winstead's makeup a little too green?
On par with the cartoon.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think Rosario Dawson's is not quite as orange as in the cartoon, because they make it a little bit more humanistic or whatever you want to call it. I'm wondering if that's a little too green on old Miss Winstead. No,
I think if anything, it might just be because it's live action and the way it's lit, it's a little bit lighter than what.
Yeah, and she's in the brighter scenes. I guess
what they could do in the cartoon where it's just a darker shade because she's in space more.
And with the orange pants, it's just she just glows versus the background.
And those blue contacts too.
It's Winstead, so bright. Everything around everything around her is neon.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm thinking. It's they could have hued that down a little bit, color corrected, down to a mild olive or something.
But it's always kind of been the color of those green Twi'leks in the old Star Wars films. And if there's one thing that I've kind of wondered is Ahsoka's talons wobbling too much? Because we never really see them wobble in the cartoons here. And here they're just like,
it's foam rubber. What are you going to do?
Yeah. And I think it's a callback to the originals where that's just kind of the prosthetics that they made. So it just makes sense to that.
I'm just glad they're using prosthetics. I have no problems with it because they're actually using prosthetics and then try to CGI them in so they move or whatever. I'm glad they're using prosthetics. They use a lot more practical in this series that I'm happy to see versus say some of the previous series. I think I like to see that they're using more practical, but not getting too complicated with the stuff either, with the sets and that. That bridge for the hyperspace ring is wonderful.
Yes.
And
there's noises and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Oh my goodness. Just the audio in that room would make me happy.
I have to say that one line from Jason kind of had me laughing where he's like, Mom, I feel like something bad just happened. A bunch of people just died in front of you. Something bad just happened.
But one thing I like is it was in Rebels that one of the many things I loved about the show, including Bendru, the big fungi guy. I love that guy. I feel bad that he died, but I also like the idea that every planet or most planets have
Doctor Who, and that's a Doctor
Who. Yeah. Well, yeah. I like his character, and I like the idea that planets had different representations of the Force living, through avatars and that. I like those characters, but I also liked the Hera character because Star Wars has had a problem with some consistency with some of their characters. Of behaving the same way, but Hera has always will be a true, pure good guy.
Yep.
I love that. I love that about her. We barely get that nowadays to where she's not corruptible. She's not really even arguing. Even through Rebels, she didn't really get ticked at people or like really like, she occasionally she might have got mad if someone didn't listen to her orders, but at the same time, she didn't hold a grudge. She was a good person, and she still is that here, and I love that. I love that about her.
She wasn't afraid to get emotional, to get her point across.
Right.
In that meeting with the other senators, she's like, I'm telling you guys right now, we need to stop this war because people have died. My friends have died. My family has died. Kanan died. Like, all of these people died. I'm telling you guys, right? And she like almost breaks down. Mon Mothma's like, bring it in, reel it in. And Hera, Jonathan Dula, reel it in a little bit. But yeah, she is very consistent with the character and what we've known and what we have like seen through 4 seasons of Rebels. Jeff, I'm sure you can agree that this character is a pretty strong personality.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
at minimum.
Yeah, I mean that's the, you kind of like what, as she says, once a rebel, always rebel, and you definitely get that idea when she's bringing her son into a battle with her, that she's training her somehow, because I don't think that's the safest place to bring your kid. They probably could have sent her to like New Republic daycare or something.
And anything that has Ms. Winstead in it, I think, is always worth a look.
Yeah,
and let alone the fact that it's a death-proof reunion with her.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Ms. Dawson.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, it is. They both play each other. No, I think the casting is good so far. I'm happy with this season. I will say I feel as good about this one, if not better, as I did about watching the first season of Mando. There's a lot of possibilities and a lot of cool things that they can do with this. And with Filoni, if he handles this like he handled the 4 seasons of Rebels, I'm excited because of that track record. If I hadn't watched Rebels, if I just saw this, I mean, I know Jeff is into it, but I think I'd be a little bit more hesitant given the last few live action series we got. Even Mando season 3 was kind of, hit or miss. But with what he's did with Rebels and kept consistent, and so far with these 4 episodes, I'm very excited to see where the last half of this show goes, because I'm like, this could make things very interesting. It could open up new ideas and take it into new directions, which is, again, kind of what Last Jedi tried, but did it clunky. But it wanted to try to redefine how we saw pretty much everything in Star Wars, from the Force to who could use the Force to who's good or bad. And he's doing it properly here. And that makes it exciting because I want to see something new. We've seen Jedi versus Sith so many times. We've seen Rebels versus Empire so many times. Now I just want to see the world, people living in the world, doing their thing. And that's what Rebels gave us. And I'm looking, it'll be cool. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah. John, thoughts? Final closing thoughts?
I'm ready for the next 4. I'm ready for the next 4. These first 4 have been so much fun. An amazing, first half, I guess. We're at halftime right now. Let's go. Let's go, Team Go. Straight up Rebels season 5. We thought that's what we were getting going into this, but that's what we've gotten.
Yeah.
And live action Chopper, dude's been on screen for 5 minutes. He's already trying to commit a war crime.
And they nailed his look too. I mean, I know CGI and practical and you had the drawing, but he looked, I mean, that was like Chopper. I totally forgot Chopper was animated because looking at Chopper in the live action, I'm like, oh, that's Chopper.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's a full puppet, I think. That's probably why. The less CG you use, the better it looks. And I know CGI, I feel bad for CGI artists because it's like their term is like a slang term, like, oh, you're using CGI. That's crap. But when you use just the right amount of it, it does wonders. And I think they're probably filming a lot of Ahsoka in the egg as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that forest was the egg. But even so, it works great. And it really the egg is the greatest way of paying homage to George Lucas by Star Wars, was groundbreaking for visual effects. So was this thing. This is like a new version of the green screen.
Right.
And, for all that we hate it, the green screen is a necessity in some filmmaking. And this is a great way to continue that.
You can't drag a crew out to the middle of Tunisia every couple of years to film.
Oh yeah.
20 minutes of a movie.
Not during the strike, anyway.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. So Jeff, what are your closing thoughts on Ahsoka episode 4? What are you looking forward to?
More of the same, and also surprises. I really like it a lot, and it's funny. It's very female skewed, but it feels very universal, and I love that about it. And I'm with John. I think that it's very exciting, and I kind of wish you could almost binge these, but then again, we get to talk about them and savor them and go back to them, watch them a second time before moving on. So that's a good thing too. And this was a lot of fun talking about it. I feel like I'm sort of remedial compared to like master's class people here, but it's good to know that at least on my level, so much of the same stuff is easily understandable as well as appealing.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal with it, because they have a lot of deep character lore, and they don't have time to get into all of that. So they just kind of have to go through the writing of the characters themselves. Like you get to see how Sabine is real kind of colorful, and how Hera is, very emotional towards Ezra. And, you get all these sort of individual characteristics that make all of these characters work so well. And especially the new ones too. They worked really great. I mean, too bad Ray Stevenson has left us, because I would have liked to have seen him for more seasons if he does live, to the end of the show. Although, we'll see if he does, I mean, one thing that would be a real dumb move is to kill Thrawn within this season.
No, they're not going to kill. They're not.
Yeah.
No.
After going this far to bring him back, it just seems stupid. Yeah. But,
they won't bring. They'll bring Thrawn back, and it'll probably go for a second season, because this is getting some good buzz and everything. And just like there's a lot of people who feel like we do about the series, I would see in second season, if they decide to just do 2 seasons with it, then Thrawn die, or Ezra and Thrawn die together or something, kind of poetic. Huh?
That's what I would like to see them rebuild the Jedi Order in the second season.
That would be cool.
She's already mentioned in this show that there is no order. Like Luke isn't working on anything. Mace isn't like out there building something. Like there is no order at all. Like I would like to see them move forward with Ahsoka and Sabine and build a new order. If she's not, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I think it would be Ahsoka and Luke building it, because we saw Ahsoka and Luke in the Book of Boba Fett, and that would kind of explain it right there. So I think they could build it together in future seasons.
Or Ahsoka once again feeling like she might not be that best equipped once she awakens Sabine's force power, but doesn't know how to control it, because she's sitting with Balin. So she ends up dropping Sabine off with Luke, going, "Yeah, you're gonna do a better job than me. I'm not a Jedi Knight, but she needs some training. You're good at it. I'm not. I'm out."
Yeah. Just don't do what your dad does.
They sure seem to drop a lot of people off at Luke Skywalker's residence, don't they?
Yeah, he's the guy that they all have to. I will say,
babies, young Jedi women, go to that island where he is. No.
I know. Well, I mean, he spent so many years, being a Jedi with no companionship, so to speak. I think he needs it real bad. But before I wrap up, I'd like everyone to have a chance to plug their stuff. So, Mark, we'll start off with you. What do you want to plug?
I guess I can plug specialmarkproductions.com if you're all curious. I do podcasting. I've got a Patreon. I've been on YouTube for 17 years. I've been doing the podcasting. This is our 10th year. I'm the old man of the stream, if you will. But I've got a lot of content up there. I do interviews as well. On my TikTok, I do 1-minute reviews of wide release films. I dabble in a little bit of everything. I can't just take to one lane, but if you go to my website, specialmarkproductions.com, that's all the links are there for everything.
All right. John.
Oh, Cinema Obscura is live in the Logan Theater every 4th Wednesday from 7 to 10. Music, live comedy, film, of course. We're basically a film archive for independent filmmakers. We got a Vimeo archive, and we've got a TV show on Can TV, Channel 19 here in Chicago, Monday nights at 11, 10th season.
Wow.
That's been a lot of fun. But yeah, just trying to share and basically archive independent filmmakers, music videos, documentaries, all of it.
That's awesome.
Bravo.
I've been supporting indie film here in Wisconsin for about 11 years now, almost 12 years. So that's very cool you're doing that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Jeff, what do you got?
Well, I'm in the 13th year of doing the Establishing Shot.org, my movie blog. I also write essays about movies, TV shows in the industry for Pipeline Artists magazine online, pipelineartist.com. And actually being inspired by the movie man over here, I just started TikTok. I've done 3 of them now, and it's kind of a 1-minute movie review, but I talk about sort of what the thrust of the show. In fact, Ahsoka was the very first one I did. And then when I like a movie or TV show a lot, I do a caricature of it to accompany my review. So I give some insights into what my take on the material is and how that is influencing the drawing, and then show a little bit about the creation of the drawing. So
it's very cool. It's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do love the drawings, sad to say.
Well, thank you, friend. Thank you. Yeah. Gives them a little something extra, another reason to read. Plus, like I said, I only usually accompany the ones that I really like that much. So it's a little tell about like, oh, Jeff liked this. Well, that one got a drawing. I should probably see that one.
Yeah, exactly. And if you guys want to see my stuff, I'm at ypareviews.com. I review all the newest movies that come out and some of the newest TV stuff that comes out. You can also find me at Film Obsessive and TVobsessive.com. Sometimes I write stuff for them. And of course, you want to see more shows like this, you can always go to ypareviews.com, or you'll probably agree on YouTube where all my material is up there. And the YPA stands for, you guessed it, you'll probably agree. All right, folks, everyone, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. And hopefully we'll see you next week. We're not sure. But yeah, we'll see you then.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.